Today, we are diving into the incredible story of a woman named Helen. Her journey starts in New Zealand with this powerful desire for freedom that takes her all over the world, only to eventually lead her right back where she began. It's a really compelling story about adventure, identity, and what it truly means to find home.
And really, it all kicks off with this feeling. Right from a young age, Helen just knew there was more out there, beyond her small island nation. This single thought is basically the engine that drives the next few decades of her life. It's this powerful, simple motivation. I have to get out and see what's out there.
So you gotta ask, where does a feeling like that come from? To really get Helen's journey, we have to go back to the beginning, to her childhood, which was, let's just say, anything but conventional.
Okay, so picture this. Helen's story starts in Queenstown, New Zealand. If you know anything about Queenstown, you know it's often called the adventure capital of the world. It's a town that is just buzzing with energy, set against these jaw-dropping landscapes, and it's always packed with people from every corner of the globe. This was the world she grew up in.
See, this wasn't just where she lived, it was her entire universe. Her parents actually ran a campsite, so her backyard was this ever-changing community of international travelers. She wasn't just surrounded by mountains and rivers, she was talking every single day with people who had actually seen the world she was dreaming about. An environment like that, well, it doesn't just encourage an adventurous spirit, it practically creates it.
And that independent streak, it started really young. At just 13 years old, she hitchhiked for the very first time. And get this, her mother gave her permission. It just tells you so much about the kind of trust and freedom she was raised with. For her, adventure wasn't something to be scared of. It was just a normal part of life.
All right, so she's got this deep-seated desire for freedom. How does that turn into a globe-trotting journey that defines her life? Well, after she finished her studies, Helen knew she couldn't stick around. That big world was calling her name, and she was ready to answer.
And her journey just unfolds across entire continents. It kicks off in Asia, then it takes her to Australia, where she meets her future husband, a Swiss guy, in a backpacker's hostel of all places. From there, her life completely shifts. She moves to Switzerland, where she ends up spending 8 years, has 2 kids, and builds a life. But look at that last point on the timeline, a return home.
But yeah, that move to Europe, it was not a simple transition. It wasn't just about changing scenery. It was a massive culture shock that would test her in ways she probably never could have imagined.
Just look at the contrast here. It's night and day. She goes from the international, English-speaking, adventure-obsessed hub of Queenstown to a tiny, traditional Swiss village where basically no one spoke English. It was a complete 180 from everything she'd ever known.
And for 8 long years, she made it her home. She built a family, had 2 children there. But that feeling of being an outsider, of struggling to communicate and really connect with this deeply rooted local culture, that was a constant battle. The free spirit from New Zealand suddenly found herself in a world that felt incredibly isolating.
So eventually, something had to give. After almost a decade away, Helen and her husband made a monumental, life-changing decision. It was time to move the whole family, their 2 young kids and everything, all the way back to New Zealand.
But of course, this is Helen we're talking about, so the journey home wasn't just a direct flight. Nope. They took their 2 young kids on a 2-month detour through Korea first. And then, when they finally did land back in New Zealand, they didn't settle down immediately. They bought a caravan and spent a whole year on the road just exploring their own country. It was like one last epic adventure to get that sense of freedom back before starting over.
And this return home, it ends up redefining everything. Not just where she lived, but Helen's entire life and her sense of who she was, bringing her story full circle in a way she never would have expected.
So after that year-long trip around the country, in 2016, a totally new chapter began. Helen and her husband separated, and she found herself navigating life as a single mom, but truly on her own terms, right back in her home country.
And you can just hear the peace in her own words when she talks about her life now. After all those years of searching and traveling and struggling to fit in, she's found her spot. She's raising her kids in this beautiful place called Ocean Beach, living right by the sea. The girl who grew up surrounded by mountains and rivers found her way back to the nature of New Zealand.
Helen's journey really makes you think, doesn't it? Is home the place you come from? Is it a place you build with someone else? Or is it maybe a feeling you have to travel the entire world to find inside yourself? It's a great question. What defines your home?